Anton is 54, engineer. His apartment is quiet by 7 p.m. He pours his coffee at 5:30 in the morning. No noise, no tension, just him. He didn't walk into solitude. He walked out of noise. There was no final fight, no big blow-up, no broken thing. One Thursday evening, he sat on his couch, and for the first time in years, his chest was just quiet. Something inside him said, "This is what I was trying to get back to." He never went looking for it again. And here's the part nobody says out loud. It wasn't that he couldn't find peace in a relationship. He found it for an hour, maybe two. Then it was gone, and the work of finding it started all over again. At some point, the cost outweighed the return. Anton is an engineer. He ran the numbers. Act 1. The man who stopped explaining. To understand what Anton chose, you first need to understand what he left behind. Not a bad person, not abuse. Something much harder to name than that. Anton was in a relationship for 4 years before his decision. She was smart, caring, and genuinely good. There were real moments, weekends where the conversation went somewhere worth going. He was not unhappy the way people usually mean it. He was depleted. Here's the difference. Pay attention to this one. Unhappy is a state. It means something is wrong right now. Depleted is a direction. It means the supply line is running out, and you can already see where it ends. Anton could see where it ended. Every time he needed to decompress, after a hard week, after carrying a heavy mental load, there was a cost. Not a dramatic one, something smaller and more consistent than that. A conversation that had to happen before he was allowed to be quiet. A tension in the room that needed his attention before his own recovery could begin. A question asked at the wrong moment that carried something much larger underneath it. Psychologists call this demand sensitivity. One partner needs to process out loud, the other needs silence to recover. Both are completely normal. But they're fighting over the same hour of the day. Anton didn't have the words for this at 46. By 52, he had both the words and the answer. The answer was the apartment, the 7 p.m. quiet, the coffee with nothing waiting in the other room. Act 2. The loop. Here's what was actually going on inside that relationship. There's a real difference in how men and women handle unresolved tension. Women, especially those who tend toward anxious attachment, are more likely to do something called rumination. That's when your brain keeps replaying an unresolved conflict over and over. Each time, it gets heavier. This isn't a character flaw. It's a measurable brain pattern. It's real. But in a relationship, it creates a specific and very predictable cycle. He needs stillness after effort. She needs resolution before stillness is even possible. He sets the tension aside until he has the capacity to deal with it. She reads that as avoidance. He feels ambushed when she brings it up during his recovery window. She feels abandoned by what looks like indifference. Neither one is wrong. But the timing is structurally broken, the same way, every single time. Anton would come home carrying the weight of a full workday. The apartment was already carrying its own weight, something unspoken from that morning, a thought she'd been sitting with for hours. He had that look again this morning. That thought had 3 hours to grow. By 6:15, it had become a conversation he wasn't ready to have yet. I stopped being able to tell the difference between walking into my home and walking into a negotiation. That's the loop. Not chaos, not drama, just persistent low-grade tension that never fully lands. Because the person it's aimed at isn't available in the way it needs. And here's the part that pushed Anton over the edge. The loop doesn't stop. It recycles. Act 3. The 3 moments. Let me make this concrete. Not the big arguments. Those are easy to spot. These are the quiet ones, the everyday ones, the ones that don't look like a problem until you zoom out and count how many times they've happened. The evening Anton gets home at 6:15. Long week, the kind that took everything. He sets his bag down. She's in the kitchen, not angry, not upset, but something is present in the room, a waiting quality. She asks how his day was. He says fine. The word lands wrong. Not because it was the wrong answer, because it wasn't enough of one. She's been alone with a thought since 4 o'clock, something from 2 nights ago that never fully closed. She needs him present before she can release it. He doesn't know this. He only knows the room is asking something of him he has nothing left to give. Fine becomes a conversation about whether he's really present. The conversation about presence makes him less present. He knows this is happening. He has no way to stop it. This is not a fight. This is the cost of the evening. Every evening, that's moment 1. 2 more coming. And the third one is the one that finally broke him. The Saturday. Anton's nervous system has one request on Saturday morning: quiet. A slow start, no agenda. This isn't laziness. For men who carry heavy mental loads all week, extended rest time is physiological. It's how the brain resets. She experiences Saturday differently. Shared time, plans, movement. To her, the weekend is what the week owed them both. He gives in by 9:30. Not because she's unreasonable, she isn't. Because explaining, for the 13th consecutive Saturday, why he needs stillness instead of activity is itself exhausting. He learned to perform Saturday the way other men perform enthusiasm. At first, it cost him a little. By year 3, it cost him something he couldn't name. The late night. 10:45 p.m. Anton's brain is already winding down. Sleep is 30 minutes out. She's awake, thinking. Something from the week hasn't closed. She brings it up, not to start a fight, but to finish one that's been on pause since Wednesday. He hears the logic. He cannot engage with the logic. His brain is in pre-sleep mode. What comes back isn't meanness, it's slowness. He says, "Can we talk about this tomorrow?" She hears, "It doesn't matter to you." He wakes up Monday morning and the conversation from Wednesday, now carrying the weight of Thursday's avoidance, Friday's tiredness, and Sunday's distance, is still there. That's when I started keeping score, not against her, for myself, counting how many times I'd walked into a negotiation instead of a home. Drop a comment right now. Men, did you ever try to explain why you needed the quiet and have it come out wrong? Women, did you ever realize, in hindsight, what the timing was costing the man in your life? I read every comment. Let's keep going. Act 4. The math. You've probably heard of the sunk cost fallacy. It's the trap of staying with something because of what you've already put in, even when the return no longer justifies the cost. Think of it like this. You've bought a concert ticket. The day arrives and you feel sick. A smart person stays home. But most people go anyway, because the ticket already cost them something. In relationships, we do this constantly. We keep investing because leaving feels like admitting the investment was wasted. Anton never fell for this trap in business. He'd walked away from failing projects mid-build. He had ended client relationships that cost more to maintain than they returned. He did not apply the same logic to his relationship. For 4 years. He knows exactly why. Because the culture has a story about men who leave. Men who stay are building something real. Men who leave didn't try hard enough, weren't patient enough, weren't evolved enough. That story has teeth. Anton had believed it for decades. But the relationship wasn't broken. It was just expensive. Here's how he ran the numbers. Energy left for work after the evening dynamics, reduced. Sleep quality compared to when he lived alone, lower. Creative output on personal projects, near zero. Hours per week that felt genuinely peaceful. No ambient tension needing management, decreasing every quarter. I wasn't leaving her. I was choosing what I already knew was possible. I'd lived in that apartment alone for 8 months. I knew what it felt like. I just hadn't been honest enough for 4 years to admit I'd preferred it. That's not bitterness. Bitterness needs a villain. What Anton arrived at is quieter than that, and more final. She wasn't the problem. The architecture was. That's not damage. That's the most expensive kind of honesty. Act 5. What she never understood. When Anton ended it, she asked what she did wrong. He told her, nothing. She didn't believe him. Because the culture doesn't have a good story for this. When a man leaves a functioning relationship, there must be someone else, or emotional damage, or something that explains the retreat. What the culture doesn't account for is a man who left after running an honest calculation, and the honest answer was, the peace I have alone is more sustaining than the peace I spend energy negotiating for with someone else. Not because she was wrong, but because the structural cost of real intimacy, two nervous systems sharing the same daily environment, is genuinely high. And some men, once they've lived on both sides of it, choose differently. The research here almost never makes it into mainstream conversations about men. Single men over 50 with strong friendships and a clear sense of purpose score nearly as high on well-being as partnered men of the same age. What drives a good life is connection, meaning, and low chronic stress. A relationship can deliver all three, but so can other structures. And when the relationship model has a documented track record, for you specifically, of delivering connection and meaning alongside high chronic stress, a rational man updates the model. Anton updated it. What he wanted her to understand, what he couldn't say clearly enough, was that this was not a verdict on her. It was a decision about which daily environment let him be most fully, consistently himself. She kept asking what she did wrong. The honest answer is, she was exactly right. Just not for the way I need to live. That's not a comfortable sentence, but it's an honest one. And the gap between those two things is where most of this conversation goes wrong. Act 6. What this means if you're younger. If you're 28 to 40 watching this, you might be filing Anton's story under What Men Do When They've Given Up. That's the easy read. Here's the harder one. Anton did not arrive here easily. He arrived here after 11 years of the same pattern across 2 relationships. A divorce he didn't see coming. A 4-year post-divorce relationship that finally taught him what the recurring cost actually was. The lesson was not, don't commit. The lesson was, know the cost before you commit. And be honest enough with yourself about whether you can carry that cost over decades without resentment quietly building underneath everything. Most men don't do this math until they're already depleted. They leave reactive, after the breaking point, after the resentment has compressed into something they can't explain without sounding like they're placing blame. Anton's version is different. He left with clarity. Not angry, not damaged, just honest. Here's what I want you to take from this. Build your relational self-knowledge before experience forces it on you. Understand what kind of daily environment you actually need to function at your best. Understand what you're genuinely able to offer, not in the romantic sense, but in the practical one. Your nervous system has requirements. Those requirements do not become negotiable just because you care about someone. The men who understand this at 30 become better partners, or they make better decisions about when not to partner. The men who understand it at 52, like Anton, make peace with the answer they finally let themselves see. That's not failure. That's the most expensive education available. You don't have to pay full tuition. Conclusion. Anton's apartment is quiet by 7 p.m. He pours his coffee at 5:30. He sleeps well. His work is moving. He has people he actually talks to, not performances of connection, the real kind. He is not lonely. He is alone, and he knows the difference. He worked hard for that distinction. The men who end up most damaged in this conversation aren't the ones who made the wrong choice. They're the ones who never admitted what the choice was actually costing them until the cost had already taken too much. If this hit something in you, subscribe. This is exactly what PsychBlueprint is built for. Drop a comment below. Men. At what age did you stop explaining the cost and start protecting it instead? Women. Did you ever understand, looking back, what peace actually meant to the man in your life? Let's talk about it.